Please welcome Board Chair of the Advertising Club of New York and General Manager, Digital Client Solutions at Nielsen, Rick Song.
We are thrilled to have you here today. For everyone here, let's see a show of hands. Last conference of the year, last kind of more, are there more? Are there more things? Well, the Ad Club party next week, don't forget about that. Well, we're thrilled to have you all here. The need for speed and connection in the post-pandemic environment is more important than ever. It's been great to see everyone out in force, which brings us today's theme of Automate, Innovate, and Transform. And we'll be hearing from the people making it happen in the out-of-home conference category as it continues to take a vital position in the new media landscape. Thank you, thank you. Shh. Shh. The delayed shushing effect. As you look around the room, you will see that gathering the community across all sectors of the industry, brands, agencies, and media companies, and to ad tech platforms is what the club is all about. For over 125 years, the club has been dedicated to educating, empowering, and celebrating members. Speaking of celebrations, who's here signed up for the Ad Club party next week? Wow, is that real? Do that again. Who's here? Who's signed up for the Ad Club party next week? Okay. All right. So now my plug's going to be a little longer because that's like a bad showing. All right. So next week, Tuesday at Sony Hall, 5:30 p.m., we are going to have our annual holiday party, which we haven't had since 2018. So it's going to be almost sold out. In addition to, I know hundreds already signed up, we've got translation artist DJ Mick, Brooklyn-based DJ. Thank you, Translation. And an all-access auction. Who here calls on brands in this room? Calls on brands? So you guys do nothing? Nobody goes to parties? Nobody? Okay, all right. If you call on brands, you will have the opportunity to bid on some all-access experiences, which include Knicks in the Verizon Suite with Diego Scotti, a priceless tour of MasterCard's Tech Hub and lunch with Cheryl Guerin, the EVP of Marketing, a K-Town Korean barbecue dinner with the CMO of EOS, So-Young Kang, a private whiskey tasting with Sophie Kelly from Diageo, a day in the life of an agency CEO with Ogilvy's global CEO Devika Bulchandani, and many, many other things. So I hope you'll come. Having said that, it is you guys who allow us to continue to engage the community. So thank you for your support. Join us at the Ad Club at advertisingorg.org or go right to the flow code on our agenda. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our President and CEO, Gina Grillo.
So you guys did it again. You filled the room. Thank you, out-of-home community. Incredible. We were talking a little bit, and I feel like our co-chairs and our committee who worked tirelessly really didn't get their due. So can I ask Ryan Lall, Dave Yacullo, Laura Brandeis, and Brian Rappaport to please stand so we can say thank you. I also want to acknowledge Alicia Greenberg, who is the heart and soul of this event. Thank you, Alicia. And Michael Bonanfatti, thank you so much for everything. Okay, so this is not possible. This is one of the few events where the whole community comes together, and this incredible collective is really what the club is all about. I just want to thank our gold sponsors, Clear Channel Outdoor, Lamar Advertising, Lightbox, and Outfront Media, our silver sponsors, Broadsign, Hivestack, New Tradition, which I had a great story with New Tradition I got to share later on, Vista Media, and our bronze sponsors, Capital, GSTV, Infillion, and Stadium, Intersection, and Orange Barrel Media. The associations who time and time again are right here with us, DPAA, the OAAA, and Geopath, thank you. Let's have a round of applause for all of that. As a not-for-profit, we're also really very grateful for companies that do things in kind, so Candid Worldwide and Flow Code, just again, great partners. And just a few little housekeeping. We know everybody is social media abuzz, so it's at Ad Club NY. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our new board members. So welcome to the board, Ryan. And he is the chair of this committee, Ryan Lall, president of Omnet. Come on up.
That part out of the way. No. Thank you, Clear Channel, for that. So I used to not need these. And before I get started, it's a pretty funny story. I was having breakfast with my good friend Dave Yacullo, and he said, I used to need glasses too. And then I stopped wearing them, and my eyes got better. So much so, he now no longer needs corrective lenses to drive. And I've been in a car with Dave, and I don't think that argument holds water. So we'll have to see. But we also know that Dave is just aging backwards. So it's no surprise his eyes are getting better with age. Okay, cool. Thank you, Gina and Rick, and to all our sponsors who make this day possible. And a big thank you again to Alicia Greenberg and Michael Bonafati, who their tireless efforts in organizing this day, really make it all possible. And I can't say enough about all the work that they do. I also want to thank my fellow co-chairs, Dave Yacullo, Laura Brandeis, and Brian Rappaport for their help in curating today's agenda. I've been co-chairing this event for over a decade now, and each year I typically start the day showing appreciation for and recognizing the great work the Ad Club does all year long in support of the at-home industry. This year, however, as Gina mentioned, I've had the opportunity to join the Ad Club as a board member and witness more closely the broader work that they do. They produce a wide variety of events, the vast majority highlighting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And each year they sponsor a mentoring program which features a competition that pairs industry leaders with local high school students who have aspirations of being the next great advertising executive. I encourage you all to please inquire with Gina or Alicia and see how you can get involved beyond this year's typical at-home event that we run. Okay, so now on to today's agenda. I think that today is going to be our most non-out-of-home day that we've had yet. And this is done by design. For the better part of 2 years, the industry has been in a stop-start recovery pattern, right? And while we saw growth and improvement in that period, we now find ourselves closing out 22 feeling a little bit unsure about the promise of 23. There's certainly a recessionary sentiment rising, and it's not just in out-of-home. Across the board, the industry is slowing, and it seems advertising clients have taken somewhat of a wait-and-see approach to at least the first half of next year. And most of us in this room know a broader slowdown or even the slightest austerity measures taken by clients can have an exponential impact on out-of-home. But it is the holidays, and it's not all, I'm not here to bring everyone down, but the truth is there is a silver lining. The stakes have never been higher and the opportunity has never been greater for the out-of-home industry. We have the talent, the tools, and more importantly, the assets to blaze a broader path to success. I believe much of what we'll hear today will give us the building blocks to a new future in out-of-home. A future that sees the work we do, day in and day out, becoming a cornerstone for brands that they will use to create a bridge for their consumers, bringing together the physical and digital worlds in a meaningful way that drives results for their business. And so I couldn't be more excited for this talented lineup of speakers. Our keynote speaker, Michael Phillips, president of Jamestown Properties, will be here today talking about the amazing work they're doing with all of their assets, but most notably the transformation of Times Square One. We'll hear from three unbelievable clients, BetMGM, DeLonghi, and Pinterest, all relatively new to out-of-home, but already doing great work and having a major impact. As always, we'll recognize the creative's contribution to out-of-home with a dynamic panel of experts that are pushing the envelope to build more eye-catching ads. And we'll have a future-forward panel that will feature a robust conversation focused on what Web3 means to out-of-home, and hopefully be left with some hints on how we can enter that new frontier. And last, but certainly not least, we're honored to be hosting the OAAA Media Plan of the Year Awards, as it is so important to celebrate the great work that's done all year long. And so thank you again for being here. You guys make this event possible. You make it a great success. And we hope to see you again here next year, of course. But let's get started. I think we already showed the video from Clear Channel, but I guess maybe we'll run it one more time. Thank you for being a gold sponsor. Thank you again. Take care.
Please welcome Dave Yaculo, event co-chair and chairman of Outdoor Solutions.
Good morning, everyone. Brian, great intro. So now with brands being at the center of our ecosystem, let's get started with our first client spotlight. Every year when the committee starts thinking about who the audience would like to hear from, we really start the conversation by what are the emerging categories in our space? Who has a great story to tell? Who is transforming their business through size and scale, through technology, while building a new platform that's centered around the consumer experience? And what category is using out-of-home both locally and nationally to help build this new marketplace? Look no further than our next spotlight, BetMGM. Welcome Ray Doyle. Ray Doyle, VP Digital, Media and Brand, BetMGM. Leading the conversation with him is going to be Dan Levi, Executive Vice President, CMO from longtime sponsor and company member, Clear Channel Outdoor. Come on up, guys.
Game starts at 20, bet slip is empty. I gotta call KG.
KG, what up?
I got nothing for you, Fox.
What you got, huh?
It's spa day, Jamie. You don't interrupt spa day.
Okay. Gracie, what's up? I need some tips.
Jamie, you want a tip?
Yeah. No. Come on, somebody. Jalen, what's up, man? You want a tip? Yeah.
You really want a tip?
I really need some tips.
Don't call somebody on live TV, Jamie Foxx.
Well, you asked. Have other friends anyway.
Marshawn, Barry, holla.
Jamie Foxx. What's up with it, Fox?
Listen, I need some tips.
I like LA.
LA?
No, Dallas. That's
Dallas?
No, Dallas not
Dallas?
fair. We gotta get Hold on. How about Detroit? Barry over there betting with his
I'll call y'all right back. Vanessa, I need your help.
I got a tip for you. Always go with your gut.
I like that. Going with my gut.
Let's go with our gut.
All right.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone. Ryan and Dave, thank you. Ryan, I love the glasses, but here's a tip. Giant font. It helps. So thanks, everyone. It's great seeing everyone here this morning. Why don't we just kick things off, Ray? There was a great video. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about BetMGM, your brand story, and I think importantly, how you differentiate from the other brands and the other players that are in the online gaming space.
Yeah, firstly, thank you all for the invite today. Incredibly excited to have a quick chat with you all. So for those who don't know, BetMGM, as a business, as Dave was alluding to, we launched 3.5 years ago. So you talk about such an fast-moving environment. The online sports betting and gaming environment is just incredibly fast-moving. BetMGM itself, we are a result of a joint venture between MGM, as you're all aware, in Las Vegas and across the nation, as well as Entain. So MGM really bring our brand. So no surprise, you can see bring our brand as well as bring our sports books in each property. And Entain bring the tech, bring the app involvement in it. So how we differentiate, we all know it's an incredibly busy and competitive landscape. I'm sure you all have seen lots of sports betting and iGaming ads over the last 3 or 4 years. And it really is a challenge for us. How do we differentiate between ourselves and the other leading lights? We really, really lean into BetMGM. We lean into MGM itself, into our properties. And as you can mention, every time we bring our marketing to life, we always try and lean into our property. So lean into MGM as our parent. What we've also decided to do to cut through, as you saw our TV campaign, our current creative, which is up on screen as well, is it's very much an ambassador-led brand. So our let's say our mix is very much, we've got Jamie Foxx, who Jamie has been the face of BetMGM for the last 3 years. So having Jamie, and we coupled him up with a roster of really, household names that cut through from not only the sports betting world, but also the entertainment world. And that's where the BetMGM brand really tries to stand out. It blurs the line between entertainment and sports betting and iGaming. So Jamie Foxx, I'm going to age myself. I know him from Willie Beeman, Any Given Sunday. But Jamie Foxx, Oscar winner, Grammy winner, he really does blur that lines between entertainment and sports betting. You couple him up. Michael might flick through a few of these slides here for me as well, but couple him up with Wayne Gretzky, the greatest of all time, Barry Sanders, Hall of Famer, Kevin Garnett, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it really is the portfolio we have as a brand with our ambassadors and our lean into MGM. It's a real success recipe for us.
Well, it's great to have you as part of the out-of-home industry as well. And I think everyone here wants to learn a bit about how you approach your media planning. One of the things that is so fascinating when you and I spoke last week is you were sharing with me the unique aspect of online gaming in that you have a business that is state by state, and it's driven by each of those states allowing online gaming, but they each do it a little bit differently. So if you can talk a little bit about how that impacts your approach to media planning and the media that you use.
Yeah, this is the biggest challenge we have, where, again, just for those who don't know, online sports betting and gaming was legalized. New Jersey was the first state to legalize it. And now we're up to 24 states where sports betting is legalized from an online side of things. We're only live in 4 states when it comes to iGaming, so casino and poker. And to Dan's point, we have to be really strategic and tactical about when we go to market in each state. So it can never be a one-size-fits-all. You really have to look at your tone of voice, look at how you go to market in each of those states. Out-of-home plays an enormous role in that. So when we launched 3.5 years ago, we were just in New Jersey. So then when we're buying media, like TV media, for example, we're obviously buying in the DMA. There's 60% wastage in all the media we buy from a television and radio point of view. What we love about out-of-home and still do is it's incredibly targeted. You're talking to the right customer. You know when people are consuming your creative on out-of-home, it's in the state that you want it to be in. And we really need to be as tactical as we possibly can. And out-of-home plays a huge role in that. That there's enormous wastage when we do national media because we're only live in 24 states. So when we do a national buy, of course, there's wastage with lots of that. This is what we really do love out-of-home for a variety of reasons, but somebody having that targeted message is a big component of it.
So going a little deeper into that, one of the things that's interesting to me, you're a performance marketer, right? Your business is getting people to download an app, use the app, and keep using that app, so acquisition and retention. But because of the dynamic of having to launch state by state, you also need to build a brand. state by state. So talk to us a little bit about the role that out-of-home plays in that mix, with a thought towards not only building kind of top of funnel awareness, but the role that it could also play in driving acquisition.
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, we now have a life cycle of different states. So I talk about New Jersey gone live in 2019. Maryland went live last week, right? So we never we can't treat both New Jersey, who's seen our creative and how it's evolved over the last 3 years. Maryland has seen it for 20 minutes. Ohio is just about to go live on the 1st of January. Massachusetts will go live in March. For each of those, then, out-of-home plays a different role in that. So if you think about it, how we tend to look at it, we warm up a market. So if I use the example of Ohio, we've been live with our marketing in Ohio for the last number of weeks, and out-of-home plays a big role in that. As you mentioned, it brings the brand to life. People in Ohio and Maryland have never heard of BetMGM. They've never seen the ad, or they've never seen our brand. So it's a really unique opportunity for us. But out-of-home creates the awareness of BetMGM is coming soon. So that can be our, let's say, warm-up approach to the market. When we do go live, so when the regulator approves sports betting, we change our tack then. As you mentioned, Dan, a lot of it is acquiring new customers. So it's a big push on both a direct response element to it with a sign-up offer for new customers, as well as continuing to build that brand or build that narrative. As you get more and more into the life cycle, it becomes more about retention and reactivation of customers. So exactly that, where it really is a change in our strategy from warm up in the state, go live in the state, and then keep those customers as the brand gets more and more mature in that state.
So building on that, when we spoke last week, you mentioned, and this is a quote, you say you obsess on data-driven decisions, which I love as a data geek. So what role does measurement play in your planning and your media selection? And in particular, out-of-home has historically been seen as a medium that's more difficult to measure. We don't believe that's the case anymore. We've made tremendous progress as an industry over the last 5 years, especially on that. So how do you approach measurement when you're looking at out-of-home as part of that mix?
Yeah, it's a challenge, absolutely. Again, it's not a New Jersey accent you're hearing here, it's an Irish accent. So I'm almost 20 years in the sports betting world. So the vast majority of my time was in the UK market. And what I really kind of took for granted, the UK market is one state, right? You don't have the quirks and challenges when it comes to media mix modeling. And that's, when we came here to the United States, first thing I was looking for is, let's get our MMM model working. Where should we put our media dollars, whether it's out of home, offline, TV, digital, or whatever it might be. And that was a big challenge to us here, because you talk about state by state, you talk about New Jersey versus Maryland as the example I gave, but also you throw up a global pandemic in the middle of that where there was no sports and you have casino, and anyway, there's a lot of complexity to it. But getting back to the question, when it comes to out of home in particular, this would have been a challenge for us 18 months ago, absolutely, where it was a little bit of gut feel. It was a little bit of, we think this is the right thing to do, but we can't justify that. As BetMGM has grown, again, we're a business of only 3.5 years, but as we've grown older and older, more and more decisions have to be made by data. And we do obsess about data-driven decisions. Of course, there's some element of where we want the brand to come to life, but what out of home can do and how we can track it, we probably look at it as four ways we're tracking out of home to this day. The kind of slightly crude way, we've got station takeovers, we've got bonus codes and QR codes and promo codes that we can track, but it's not as scientific as we would like. When it comes to mobile ad IDs, this is where now we're getting into the world where we're being a lot more scientific about it. And this is where I'm like you, where I can justify a spend. That's what I really want from our BI team. So we work hand in glove with our BI team when it comes to MMM modeling. But the last component that we've done, where we start to use the challenge of having different states, we can start to pit one state against each other. So I'll give you an example of Virginia and Colorado. I think we picked, where I could be getting this wrong now, but similar population, similar ad spend. So what we do is we might, and similar with all our marketing, we'd run our marketing as normal. We might start to turn off or ramp up some of our channels to get an indication of what kind of a change that was making. So in out-of-home in particular, we would ramp up our spend in out-of-home in one state and keep it consistent in another as a control group, and that gives us some indication of the performance of out-of-home. But again, it's something we always see, how do we continue to improve? And as you said, Dan, the evolution of the last couple of years in measurement is a real key component. It gives us the confidence of where to spend our dollars.
So it's interesting, we talked about this last week. Most brands, when they do marketing mix modeling, they do that approach on a national basis. And out of home oftentimes is challenged in a marketing mix model because most brands don't use it nationally. The fact that you have to go state by state is actually a really interesting opportunity, I think, for everyone in the room, because you're effectively doing an MMM state by state. Tell us a little bit about the role that your agency plays in that, because I know you've worked with Ocean Media forever. What role do they play in helping you not only understand the analytics and build the model, but then translate that into the actual media planning?
Yeah, as you did, we've been with Ocean since day one, a phenomenal partner with us, but they're always asking us, they always want more and more data. They're like us, so it is kind of all in one team. So they're eager to see how we can really attribute everything we're doing from an offline, whether it's TV, radio, streaming, or certainly when it comes to out of home. So it's, as I mentioned before, the strides we've taken over the last 18 months has been fantastic. There's more to go. There's more things to do. That's why I know we were talking last week, Dan, of how we can all help each other when it comes to attribution, because that's where we can spend more dollars in each state to talk about the challenge we have coming up. But in the sports betting and iGaming world, when we can see an opportunity, we're not shy about spending money towards it.
This is calling it audible here, but I want to call out that one of the things I think is really unique about the out-of-home space is, unlike every other media sector that I've worked in, there's a collaborative aspect to the way that we work together. And when you're thinking about measurement, one of the things I would just encourage you to think about is we all measure each other's media. Like, there's no interest that anyone has in understanding whether Clear Channel's media works or Out-of-Front's media works. It's about the plan that you do. So we'd love to dive in further with you as a follow-up on that, because I think not we, collectively can really help you with that and get to a deeper understanding. The clock is ticking down here, so I want to jump. 3 minutes. Yeah, but this is a really interesting, we were talking about this earlier today. There's a lot of focus these days on disruption in digital media, and specifically around questions about brand safety. And so it's creating more challenges than ever for so many marketers, especially performance marketers, who have relied upon social media and digital media as a way of not just driving the business forward, but understanding the impact of it. Well, now with the disruptions that are happening around brand safety and other things, what do you see as the role that out-of-home could potentially play in supporting your business differently now that there are those brand safety issues that you're dealing with?
Yeah, listen, certainly in the digital world, ever changing. 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago is different to where we are now. So when it comes to our brand, we firmly believe, BetMGM, number one in the iGaming space nationwide, and a real leader when it comes to brand marketing. Brand safety is everything to us. We need to make sure that where our brand comes to life, both in a digital or offline, out of home, is in the right positions. And certainly more and more focus about responsible gambling will come into place in the coming days, weeks, months, and years ahead. But certainly what out of home gives us is that comfort that we know that the placements that they're in across the nation is exactly where they should be. We work very closely with you all, with Ocean Media as well, to make sure that there's no rogue placements from an out of home point of view that they shouldn't be in. And that really gives us the confidence that in the digital world it can be challenging, and we make decisions literally on a daily basis. In the out-of-home space, we've that kind of comfort blanket to make sure that we know that the brand is resonating in the right places, where it needs to be.
You mentioned mobile ad IDs before. I want to go back to that real quickly. The role that out-of-home plays in your mix is very local. And I know we've spoken about how the specific locations of the inventory are key, not just things like transit takeovers like you've done in New Jersey, which is awesome. But also selecting inventory that's near the casinos that you use the brands in your advertising. But the mobile ad IDs give us a deeper understanding these days of not just the location of the media, but who is being seen. Are you using that kind of audience data to inform your planning, or is that a future state?
No, it's a really good question. We're now, being perfectly honest, 3 years ago it was getting some scores on the board, getting customers in the door. Let's get as many customers as we can signing up to BetMGM. As we get mature, it's not about getting customers, it's about getting the right customer. It's now, we talk about data again, it's now the lifetime value of a customer. So it's not just about getting Billy or Bob or Michelle, it's about getting the right customer that we feel can drive our business forward. With data, with mobile ad IDs you're talking about, with out of home, we can identify if you take a particular state, take New Jersey, because we're just talking about it, with our property down in Atlantic City, how many customers are we acquiring around the Atlantic City area? So that, the various DMAs, because that's where out-of-home can really play a role. If we're under-indexing in a particular area, that's exactly what we look for with our current customer mix, and we can see whatever it might be, North Philly, that we need to ramp up our media spend in that. And out of home is always our first port of call, because not only does it give, as I mentioned, brand, direct response, innovative, creative thing. I know I've talked a lot about data, but I'm a creative guy as well. So what out of home I'd love to be able to do is kind of bring that brand story to life with Jamie Foxx and Erline and Wayne Gretzky, and bring that all to life in a really creative way. That's what I love about out of home. It gives us the opportunity to do that.
We really appreciate how you're leaning into the medium. Appreciate the business. Last question, we're running over, but I just love this question. You had a magic wand. You could change one thing about the out-of-home industry. What would it be?
I'm going to say two. So keep helping us with attribution. Keep making sure that help us help you in terms of attribution. On the creative side, you see these 3D, interesting creative opportunities when it comes out of home. I love that. I obsess about that. We talk about that internally. You see these in Times Square or in London. These wonderful opportunities that. We're not shy of investing in that if the opportunity arises, because we talk about big Super Bowl ads and we talk about big campaigns of Twitter takeovers, whatever. I love that opportunity for someone to take a picture and send it to their friends and go, that was pretty cool. And that's kind of I'd love that to happen for a piece of, and it's happened a few times with BetMGM Creative. That makes me happy when I see something like that.
That's awesome. And I actually think that's a perfect transition to the next panel. I thought I was going to have a script to introduce us, but I don't. So I'm just going to say, Jody, Jody Sinisi, where are you? I think, so Jody is going to be hosting a panel discussion now talking about creative.
Perfect.
And I think what you just said about the social impact at home will be a key part of that. So,
great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
It's not the coffee break yet. So just a big thank you to Raymond. That was a great segue. When it comes to big three-dimensional Times Square signage and to social out of home, Out Front does it really well, so we'd love to chat with you at the coffee break. I just want to firstly thank the panel. My 3 a.m. Nightmare was that none of them showed up, and I had to come up here and kind of wing it for 15 minutes. So really appreciate that the 3 of you are here. We've got a great mix of expertise. I think we have the best topic of the day, and I think there's a lot of creative that's happening actually this week in New York City, in the press, in real life, and we're really excited that the timing of this panel kind of intersects with that. So I just want to thank Benjamin and introduce Benjamin D'Agostino, Director Strategy of Initiative. You guys went out of order. Jamari Douglas, VP Marketing, PR and Communications from Bermuda Tourism, and Matt Rowan, Chief Creative Officer of Matt. And I'm going to ask each of them to do a short introduction before we get started. So why don't we start with you? Benji said I can call him Benji. So
yeah,
Benji.
I do prefer Benji or Benjamin. So I'm Benji. I work as a media strategist. Sorry, not used to the mic. And I work on a couple different accounts, many Gen Z focused brands, but we do a lot of out of home. So it's really interesting. There obviously are challenges with reaching a younger audience with maybe what people would call a more traditional format. However, we find ways with our clients to really make sure we're making an impression, especially on Gen Z, teens. I work across FDA, which is anti-vaping, the real cost, and then I also work on Nintendo, which is a little bit more fun, as in what the product we're trying to sell.
And we'll dig into that a little bit deeper, and so that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Matt?
Hey guys, I'm Matt. I'm Chief Creative Officer of a company called Matt, which is based in New York City. we call it a creative company because we have actually 3 parts of our core business. In the middle is a creative services agency that does everything from experiential work to storytelling to campaigns to creative strategy. But on either side of what we do, and we've been doing this since we started, was we produce concerts for ourselves. So Matt is a brand and has to actually sell tickets and get audiences to come to our events non-commercially. And then we also produce feature films as a third kind of component to our business. But all that really works together with most of our partners are coming to us to kind of think about really outside the box ways to market them, whether that's an event, whether that's a more longer format story, or as it pertains to out of home. Our briefs are oftentimes like, what can we do in this city that is completely out of the box? And part of it is in this space, but other parts of it is like, how can we just show up in that world?
Right. And,
yeah.
and Matt, is your name Matt and the agency Matt a coincidence? Or
No, one is like not glossy, like matte, like flat.
Matt, okay.
Flat, yeah.
So we're not glossy.
No,
Okay, that's
yeah,
good to
exactly.
know. And Jamari.
Yes, good morning. Bermuda is glossy, so there we go there. But I'm from the island of Bermuda in the North Atlantic Ocean. Bermuda Tourism Authority is responsible for driving tourists to the island. We're responsible for the business, protecting the brand. There we go. And very excited to be here. So my role is Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and PR. So the fun stuff. So I get to do the ads and the activities there. So.
That's a lot of stuff. And since you're holding the mic and speaking, maybe we'll just start with you.
Okay.
One of the things I noted that I thought was super interesting is that you started as an intern at Bermuda Tourism, and we have that in common because I started as an intern as well.
Oh, look
so,
at that.
Yeah.
Well, they could not get rid of me. I was the longest serving intern.
They
I said,
can't get
hire me, please. And
they can't get rid of me either. It's
Yeah.
awesome. So talk like for a minute just about the career journey, because that's I think that's interesting that you started there, and I think it was in July you got promoted to the VP title to run the whole marketing, communications, PR practice.
Yeah, thank you. So I started as a sales and marketing intern. I was only supposed to stay in New York for 1 year, and I kept renewing my visa to come here. And then after a while, Customs said, Jamar, you're going to have to either give you a job or go back home. So got the job here and was in the digital marketing space. So really social media. So Facebook was the only thing that was around before Instagram and Twitter. So I am showing my age, my Gen Z there. But, and continued there. And I left for a little bit, for 2 years, and then went to Bermuda Business Development Agency as a marketing director. So really focused on the B2B side and reconnecting. And my love of tourism, my joy of tourism brought me right back on here to Vice President of Marketing.
And we're going to explore some of those campaigns in a minute, but I want to go back to Benji for a moment. You referenced Nintendo, and I know Nintendo did some super cool stuff, some IRL, URL, experiential.
Yeah.
So you want to just take it away and tell us about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting case study because we all know Nintendo is obviously a video game. They do have their own metaverse, as you could call it, but without a home and reaching this audience, I can't iterate how important it is to make sure that you're showing up also in real life in environments. And so obviously we spend a lot in digital environments, but it's really getting clients to see the value and that extra touch point, but not just an extra touch point, a more impactful touch point that can really get their attention. A lot of it comes down to storytelling for this audience, making sure that, it's out of home can really serve as that kind of launch kickoff point. And so a lot of the products that we have for Nintendo to get everybody's awareness, get everybody talking about it, we really want to make sure we're making the most impact, but also weaving in a story. And so we do that with QR codes. We have an example which we'll show later of actual out-of-homes being built in real time through social interactions. And so how can we uniquely create a third space, kind of like a physical space, where we're not just putting out messaging, but actually creating an interaction in real life. So that's kind of what we do with Nintendo, trying to go beyond that virtual space.
And was the out-of-home as part and parcel of the plan all along, right? It was.
Yes.
So what you built was contingent upon having
it was like an ecosystem, and really, when you put out-of-home in the center of the ecosystem, you can really start to see the idea in itself starts to feel a lot bigger. But you also have to think for the consumer and the touch points and how they're experiencing your marketing message. It just feels that much more impactful when they're seeing it in a digital space, but then they look up and they're in the real life and they see it around them. Also, I think someone mentioned before, taking pictures, sharing is so super important for these, especially younger audiences that really live on social.
Yeah, we think that there's a complete opportunity in the intersection between out of home and social. You know, we're calling it the hashtag SOOH space.
Right.
Because I think they work in tandem. You know, sometimes social moves to out of home, and other times out of home moves to social.
Right.
And I think in tandem they strengthen each other. Matt, you gonna jump in?
I think it could also move over into press, because we a lot of times are getting approached to try to come up with an idea that's going to create a moment, and the out of home can become a way to create something that then is actually covered in press because it was a spectacle or because it was a really well thought, different. So Bottega has a fashion show in Detroit that only 600 people can go to. They do a full buyout at Times Square and live stream that show for only 18, 20 minutes. That creates the moment. That photo then gets covered on Vogue, and now it's a piece of press.
Yeah.
And that image is more striking than maybe an image from the show.
And I think Jamari has an example this week. We appeared in MarTech, right?
Yes, yes.
I think we could show that. Do we have that image on the screen? I'm screwing up their order, but it's relevant now. It's contextually relevant to show that now. Anyway, go ahead, Jamari.
So, like what you were similar to what you were saying is that you use that for intelligence as well. So, combining the two. So, if people are asking questions on social, you can really answer those questions in your creative, so people can become aware. One of the things we did with this ad was really focused on launching our Lost Yet Found campaign, which talks about looking at the nooks and crannies and understanding the locations that people think they know about Bermuda, but we're showing it in a different way. And this helps to support that and show the different aspects.
Could you talk about this campaign? Because it integrated not just this installation in Times Square, which is the kind of thing that Raymond likes. It's that 3D in Times Square.
Yes,
We call them Xscape.
I smiled when you said that. I was
But-
like, look at
but-
us.
But there's, and this is maybe the 30th one that we put in Times Square this year. This is one of the early ones and one of the most creatively arresting ones, so congratulations on that. But I think it was part of a larger out-of-home ecosystem and other components. So you want to speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, so what we did was we wanted to create, we were having an awareness problem for Bermuda. So people were, during the pandemic, we did close our borders, and we did have some of the travel restrictions that limited people's interest in Bermuda. And so now that all restrictions are gone, so please book your flights to the island. But all the travel restrictions are no longer there. We needed to wake up the community to create a large awareness and come back in a big way. That will create two things, is awareness that Bermuda, what do you do, what are the activities that you can do, but also get the media aspect of it. So we had to come out with a new way, and then this was presented to us with the 3D ad. In addition to this, we had one at Penn Digital, which was downtown on 34th Street, and then we took over the subway stations at 42nd Street as well. And those were some of the longer live board ads as well that were a part of the out-of-home thing. So that completed the story. So we were guiding people to the billboards, and then there were days that we'd switch off, and it would just be the general longer form commercial of our 90-second Lost Yet Found video.
And how did it work in tandem with the digital component? What was the synergy with what happened online?
So referencing, people were scanning and finding more information. They could dig into it. They would also find the location. So Lost Yet Found is, like I said, about discovering places that you may not necessarily know. So if you were scanning, you were given an itinerary that showed different places, so you can kind of guess. So we did guess where it was, pieces of the puzzle you can put together. So create some engagement, online engagement and activity, and cause people to think about Bermuda in a different way, which they can test their knowledge. And it's just like, yes, I know the island, but you haven't been here, or you haven't been here, or is this Horseshoe Bay? It's not the beach, and those things there. So really, you went from the out-of-home experience to the online web experience to actually booking and driving the awareness.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Thank
you. So one of the notable things between the three of you is that you each focus on a different audience segment. So you're looking at Gen Z, Matt, I know that you've done a lot of work with the luxury consumer, luxury brands, and Jamari, obviously you're looking at the tourism sector.
Yes.
So do you want to speak for a minute in how you approach out-of-home vis-a-vis the audience segment part of it? Because it works across all segments, but we all do different things to approach those segments.
Yeah, like I was just saying about Gen Z, is that you kind of have to go think about things completely differently. And storytelling, as I said before, is important for probably all of our audiences, but it comes to life differently. And you storytell in different ways. You're using different channels, different mediums to really get your message across. But I can't iterate how important it is for Gen Z to just make sure they're seeing something, understanding it, and actually engaging with it. I think even with the tourism example, it's a really great example of you want to have that engagement. So for like Nintendo, we're experimenting with things like QR codes because we know it's a little gamified. It's a little bit of an extra layer for the out of home to really keep people interacting, but also cookie data that you can treat as well. But again, data is important, and out of home is bringing that in as well when we're looking at these.
Following up on that, do you feel like the physicality of an out-of-home campaign or installation adds credibility to a social-first brand for Gen Z and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, Matt will definitely be able to speak to this a lot more, but when you see the rise of a lot of these direct-to-consumer brands, you'll see that they literally spend most of their money on digital advertising, but then that little bit that they don't spend on digital is usually for something like out of home. It's a billboard in Times Square. It's a real physical moment, like Matt said, that they're giving to their consumers.
Yeah, let's explore that, Matt.
No, that's, yeah, or a pop-up or an experiential space so those brands can live. We're really interested in the unique, like the things that like a lot of our brands want to be the first to do something, or if I can find a unit or something that's incredibly artful, or like, you know, the side of a building that has incredible architecture, like a lot of times we're looking at that space from like, how can it be the most powerful image or something that feels really unique, or new technologies, and like, you know, what are really innovative. Like I'm looking at a lot of these like hologram boxes right now, like the size of fridges, and you can move them around anywhere. That's cool.
I have a press release in my folder, which I wanted to share today, but I was just told it's embargoed until 11 o'clock, so I can't share it. But based on everything what you're saying, it's an awesome opportunity for you guys. The only problem is you'll be second.
See.
But it's a killer installation. You know, using some real AR music in a way that nobody's ever seen before. So at 11:01, come see me, seriously, and I will let you read it.
I want to know all about it, because that's we're constantly basically putting that type of stuff in front of our partners and then giving them things that they can dig into more, and then that's shaping the briefs and like what we're looking for out in the space. Then we'll have the more traditional, you know, true out of home that backs it up, but those moments come from that kind of.
But I do love that first to market. So with us, that was the first question we asked when we met with the team is, have you worked with another destination to do this? And said, well, we're talking to Bahamas and some other ones. They said, oh, no, we're going to beat them. And so we actually moved forward with this. But it's also, like you said, showcasing the things, and how we approach it is more of the seasonality. For the first quarter. So what are the things that you can do in the first quarter? Because we have the seasons in Bermuda, so we don't necessarily want to showcase just the beach. That's why you see the whale moving around, but you can do the gentleman in the wetsuit and the other activities that people may not necessarily know about the island, but can experience there and cause them to question what it is, and then seek further information by scanning the QR code, and then finding that same iteration on the website and continuing the journey on social channels. So wherever you go, it started with out of home and continued throughout whatever digital channel the user chose.
Great. Hey, Matt, can we explore the luxury sector for a while? Because I know you've done a bunch of work with luxury brands. And I was down in Miami last week with a bunch of clients celebrating Art Basel. And just super interesting in how brands have an increasing presence at Art Basel every year. I mean, it was filled with brands. And one of the kinds of asset types we sell in Miami are these large-scale walls. And more and more luxury brands, I wrote a few down, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, YSL, they continue to increase their spend in out-of-home. And I think it's just an interesting commentary on them needing to break out of whatever they need to break out of. And I just would love to hear your expert guidance on why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and what's the audience approach behind that.
I think it's oftentimes it reinforcing a market that they're going into. So in that space, oftentimes they're premiering a store or a new location or some sort of monumental event that might be happening during Basel per se, and then they'll back that up with a bunch of out-of-home supporting it. Like I remember one year we did a week's worth of stuff with Pernod Ricard, different luxury space, less fashion, but champagne. And they had an end-to-end experience from a whole week of events, private events, concerts, things like that, hotel partnerships. But from the moment you arrived in the airport to getting to South Beach, they had a crazy installation in the airport itself. Then you went outside and there was a full out-of-home buy of the airport itself. Then the billboards on the way to South Beach. So it was like they were planting a flag, being there. And I think that's where a lot of those brands want to kind of just really establish that presence.
And I also did wonder with luxury brands like those, they've got their consumers, but there's a lot of aspirational consumers. And if they're just targeting the media, they're missing the young women, for instance, who buy pocketbooks that they have to pay off over 2 or 3 years because they're $2 or $3 grand. And if it was like super targeted, they would miss those aspirational or next gen customers. But in the out-of-home space, they can cast a wide net that way.
It also gives you scale, and it gives you just the way to really show up in a very artful way.
And we've also seen a lot of it become good content for social channels, whether it's influencers or celebrities taking pictures of themselves in front of those kinds of installations and then sharing them across their social channels and getting a lot of amplification.
Yeah, this is a good example of that. Like these were bus stops, but this was, again, it was sort of like how do you flip something? So we actually did an event in New York to premiere this collaboration with Virgil, but the same night we took over every bus stop in Chicago and transformed them into these kind of like artful installations.
Looks good. We're getting low on time, so I want to ask just one quick question. Anything next in tech and out-of-home for you guys, tech, creative, and out-of-home? Is there anything in the incubator? Or are you cooking things up? Or do you prefer when we come to you guys and say, hey, we've got this new idea? Jamari, looks like you've got something.
It looks like I'm waiting for the embargo to happen at 11:01, so I'll come and see you after that.
I'll have to see you too.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation. But no, again, continuing to tell the stories and finding innovative and creative ways to shock the market, to wake the market up, and to be first to market is where we're focused. So any opportunities around that is really what we're looking for there for Bermuda.
Make a good point on we want to know because I don't specifically know the technical things that are coming out in your space, and we can craft creative into it, but the more that we're seeing is going to inform how my teams think about what they're making.
Happy to do that.
I echo that as well. Having an understanding, meeting with strategists, understanding what are the different levers we can pull on in this space. We bring those to our clients, and we're always trying to put the most innovative formats forward, especially in out-of-home, because it really does.
It does matter.
And it's a cross-generational thing. I can't echo that enough. It doesn't matter who the client is. They know what out-of-home is and they love it.
Testament to this mix of client base and audience. So, in the spirit of the holiday season, my close was going to be what's on your wish list, but we've run out of time. So instead, I'm going to fast track that. Naughty or nice?
Oh, God. Naughty.
I'm going to go with naughty.
I'll be nice.
Okay, and now it's my pleasure to introduce Greg Glenday, CEO, Lightbox, and thank you to my panelists.
Thank you. All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Fireside Chat with Shanae Sifrit. Shh. Welcome. There you are. Skip one. Perfect. Shanae is the senior lead of global brand strategy at Pinterest. A new out-of-home client, but has fast become one of the more innovative clients in our space. So really excited to have this conversation with Shanae. Also, I'd like to point out that Bob and Clear Channel got their video played twice, so we'll be looking for another play. So Shanae, let's start with just if you could introduce yourself, and obviously I think everyone is familiar with Pinterest, but people have different relationships with it, so maybe you could talk about what's happening in 2022, headed into 2023 at Pinterest.
Yeah, so super excited to be here, especially because Pinterest is fairly new to the out-of-home space. So I lead our global brand marketing campaigns. So that's in the US, the UK, in Germany, France, Latin America, and Japan. And we're fairly new. So I brought some slides to show how we've showed up in the market in the last 2.5 years. I like to say we're a toddler in the integrated marketing space. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is our first big scale campaign in 2021 called You Might Surprise Yourself. So when we think of out of home for Pinterest, it's not about unaided awareness because most people know what Pinterest is. It's just how do we introduce the use of Pinterest in a different way. So this was us in 2021. If you go to the next slide. This is more of us. This is us in UK in 2021 with a campaign called You Might Just Surprise Yourself. And it's really about the journey to Pinterest and how you might come for one thing. Like most people know us for weddings or other large life events, like maybe you just got your first apartment or you just got a new home. A lot of people use us for holiday decorations, but you can also use us for day-to-day stuff like planning a really nice meal or planning a girls' night or figuring out what you want to wear. So if we go to the next slide. This was us in 2022, so we just wrapped a campaign called Don't Yourself. It was really about getting past all of the saboteurs in our life that stopped us from trying new things. And again, this was a global campaign. It was an integrated campaign, so if you go to the next slide, I will show you how our film and out-of-home, how our film and television spot translated to out-of-home. Should be able to click, maybe. Okay, maybe not, so maybe no video, but it was a really great commercial, and hopefully you all had seen it, but it was basically about how we block ourselves from trying really interesting things, and this was the station takeover that we did in Penn Station that was really about introducing new ways for people to use Pinterest.
That's great, and I have some good news for you. When we were prepping for this, we talked about the growing importance for our out-of-home to Pinterest. So can you talk a little bit about how you think about the media mix? And I know the video was sort of how it all integrates together, but maybe you could speak to the media mix and what you've seen that makes out-of-home more important to you in the future.
Yeah, so we're in an interesting space because as a social media platform, people buy media on us. So trying to figure out what's the right media mix for Pinterest. So when we think about our online video and our commercial campaigns, we also want to think about how do we put ourselves in the contextual places that people might figure out a new way to use Pinterest. So we use out-of-home we talk about use cases. How do we show the way that you can use out-of-home to find a makeup look? How do we show a way that you can use out-of-home to figure out your next tattoo? So we put our out-of-home stuff, we try to make it as contextually relevant as possible. So we'll put a fashion spot in Times Square, or we'll put we'll try to put a spot about dinner near a grocery store. So really when we think about out of home is how do we make it contextually relevant where people would actually use our platform.
So when you think about that as sort of an omnichannel approach, and you've got a complex job because it's different cultures, different countries. So when you think about omnichannel, how crucial is keeping that story united? And I will say I saw some of your creative on the way down here, and it just catches your eye, and you know immediately that it's Pinterest because you've seen it in other places, and it sort of tells a story across medium. So is that on purpose? How do you think about that, and how does your team think that through?
Yeah, we start with one concept. So our global team is fairly tiny, but we start with one concept and we figure out how do we translate it and make it culturally relevant to the places that we're going to be in. For us, inclusion and diversity is very, very important. So we have filters on our app where you can search for a hairstyle and you can search by your hair texture, or you can search for a beauty look and you can search by your skin tone. So we use the ways that we build our platform to also think about how are we going and making sure that we're inclusive in our out of home. So a story that may make sense in the US may not make sense in Germany, not just because of the language barrier, but because they think about things differently.
Very interesting. You know, when I look around the room, there's a lot of people that I know from not out of home, right? The last 5 years, a lot of people have realized what's happening here in the renaissance and out of home, pandemic aside, and people have come from digital and broadcast and other places into out of home. So we started talking about things like the consumer journey, things that typically weren't thought of in out of home, that it was just sort of the context is where is the billboard and that's the context. Now, smart marketers like you are thinking about the consumer journey and sort of how does that work in out of home. So because you guys are only a couple of years into out of home, can you talk about how you think about the consumer journey when you're purchasing and planning out of home?
Yeah, so it's about us building really integrated campaigns so that you're seeing us on multiple touch points. So you might see us because we did a station takeover on your train ride home, and then you open your phone and you might see a digital ad, and then you look on Hulu and you might see one of our streaming ads. So we make sure that we want to tell a relevant story so that every time you see us, you're thinking of us in a different and new way.
Do you think that's harder than doing that on other platforms, other mediums?
Yeah, I mean, it really is because we start at the very beginning thinking of a full integrated media plan. So it isn't like right now we're starting for planning for 2023. So it isn't like out of home becomes like an add-on. Like right now we're thinking about an entire marketing mix that works with our customer journey so that we can amplify our messages and making sure that we hit people on those multiple touch points.
I love that. We talk about context a lot these days. So how important is the context, sort of where and who, to Pinterest? And then which contextual environments are the most valuable to you? And when you think about context to drive interactivity, awareness, or platform usage, like, is it just awareness? Is it just, more usage? Is it down? Like, what is it that you're trying to get out of that context?
Yeah, so we're a very visual platform. So when people think of Pinterest, they might think of weddings, but there's so many things that you can see when you open the app. So we try to lean into, we'll do a really large scale billboard, like in Times Square or in LA. We also think about digital as well. So how do we continue to showcase multiple use cases? Because we're seeing that most people, if you only use Pinterest for one thing, if you decide to lean into something else, we'll get you to retain on Pinterest. So maybe you came for the food, but we also want to show you the really cool sneakers that you can plan on Pinterest, or we also want to show you the really cool haircut that you can plan on Pinterest. So for us, contextually, not only are we doing the large-scale billboards, we're also leaning into some of the digital platforms, some of the digital surfaces that we can show multiple use cases for Pinterest.
Yeah, it's very interesting because in some ways, your users are the product, right? Mm-hmm. They're the ones who create the product. So showing them on a billboard, kind of brings it to life in a real way. That's very interesting. So when you think about your target, right? So Pinterest is different to each person. So it's very hard to do something, a billboard is one to many. An out-of-home board, anything is one to many. So how do you think about the message changing based on the context, time of day, other things like that you can control?
Tell me about it. So we try to figure out what are like our core use cases because we're not going to satisfy everyone. And it's really interesting when we work with our creative agency and our media partners, we're really, really trying to match audience with use case. So we might not put something that is pretty far out, like a Gen Z buzz haircut in a place where it's mostly an industrial park. So we try to lean really deeply into who our audience is in that area and what are the things that'll resonate really deeply with them. And the great thing is, like, on our platform, we know that. So people come to Pinterest to plan, so we know a ton about what they're looking for, and we can use our own insights to match with our media plan to figure out how do we get the right use case in the right space.
I like to think, now selfishly, I think the people in this room like to think about out of home as ad intended. We use that term that we've coined. It's very chaotic in social and digital right now, to say the least. The last 60 days have made it very interesting, very difficult for brands to figure out, if you have a brand like yours that's very positive and uplifting, where can you be that's sort of a safe haven to deliver that message? We think out of home in general is a great place because it's ad intended. Do you think about, dynamically changing based on what's happening without naming or picking on other companies that may be going through some, they're hitting some potholes these days? Do you think about the dynamic media planning and making changes to things like that?
Oh, absolutely. As a media channel ourselves, we try to be the most positive place on the internet. So when we're thinking about our integrated plan, we also want to make sure that we're leaning into positive places.
We've never upset anybody. And then what does success look like? Like how are you guys measuring us? I think typically that's been an Achilles heel that we're very excited about solving that in this room. One of the Achilles heels has been not as measurable, not as precise, and we could argue that all day, but not as precise as what people perceive digital and social and other things to be. So how do you think about measurement for out of home?
Yeah, so we know that we can't directly measure if someone sees a billboard and comes to start on Pinterest or uses Pinterest, but we really lean into how are we changing sentiment? So how are we changing the way that people understand Pinterest? Comprehension is big for us. So with our out of home, we're also looking to figure out, does it make you understand Pinterest any better? Do you now know how to use Pinterest? Do you now see us as something that you can use more frequently? So sentiment is something that we measure. We also measure incremental use of the Pinterest ads, of the Pinterest platform, and we work with our media agency and also our out-of-home partners to figure out the right ways to measure that.
And how do you think about video or other pieces of creative in the media mix within out of home?
Yeah, so we're a visual platform, and we don't want people to think of us as just a crafty place or just the wedding place or just the first new home place. So we really are leaning into video to show those diverse use cases, and especially because people who come to Pinterest and lean into us really deeply, the people who we call our golden cohort, are people who come to us and they start with one thing and they end up someplace else. So you might have come for, we were talking yesterday about, you might have come to do your holiday planning, but now you see something that you really want to use for a wallpaper. And because you are doing a floral wallpaper, maybe now you want to buy a floral shirt. And because you are buying a floral shirt, maybe now you want to get a floral tattoo. So we are leaning into digital and media out of home, really so that we can continue that journey and continue that story so we can lean deeper into Pinterest.
Pinterest has always been one of the more beloved brands that, again, quasi-competitor, also a client. So, it's one of those interesting brands that everybody has good feelings about. What's next for you guys? More countries? How are you thinking about growth at Pinterest?
Yeah, so we really want to continue to tell our story. I think when people think of the social media landscape, we tend to be the underdog, even though we're the nicest player. So we really want to get the brand recognition for what people can actually do on Pinterest. And though we are a media channel, like we have our advertisers, we also do out of home for them too. It raises our profile. So when Pinterest as a brand raises, our standing as a media partner raises as well.
It's pretty interesting because we have 2 clients this year that used Pinterest feeds in their ads. So you guys, it's sort of a really complex ecosystem with the way people feel, the way other brands use you guys, work with you guys, and then translate that to out of home. So I think you get some ancillary benefits there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're talking about the Marriott partnership. So like the brands who love us, they love us and they lean in deep. So we can also do out of home partnerships as a way to extend their media plan as well.
I remember the meeting we had with them where they said, hey, can we do curated Pinterest feeds on your screens? And I said, it's okay with me if it's okay with Pinterest. So of course, we would love that. The more the merrier.
Yes, and usually those questions come to me and I always say yes. If it's a brand that we really love, we lean into it.
Good to know, and I think you guys are, you're one of the brands that other brands look to and try and emulate because of the positive feelings that consumers have. So we really appreciate you guys coming into out of home, sticking with us, working through it, helping us innovate. And I'm glad to see that you want to grow in 2023 and beyond. So I really thank you for your support in the industry.
Yeah, and thank you all. So I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, we're fairly new to this space, so we're continuously testing and learning what makes sense for us as a digital platform that also sells media, that also buys media. So always interested to find out, what's new and great and ways that we can all grow together.
Luxury brands, Bermuda tourism, a lot of, where you're traveling, a lot of things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I promise you, all of the brands that you work with are probably on Pinterest.
So I think we're finished right on time here, and I believe I am introducing a coffee break. So that's easy. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for the wonderful speakers. We are going to break. We're just asking that everyone's back in their seats by 10:40 for the next client spotlight.
He's the handsome one.
Hello? I think it's on. Turned it on.
Testing.
Welcome, everyone. This is the halftime show for the streaming audience. Thank you for tuning in. I think we heard a lot of great things this morning. I mean, you know, a lot of these conversations, when we'd have speakers up, we'd be talking about, you know, one thing like data or context or technology, but the one thing about the conversations today were that all these conversations were linear about how they're basically using all of those points to basically make a fully linear and holistic campaign. So I thought that was something that was unique about these conversations that that maybe were a little bit more siloed in the years past.
I think like one of the big things too is really it used to always just be about contextual relevancy, and now it's really utilizing the data, the technology, really enhancing and making it richer storytelling, which I think that's a big product of what's been going on in the industry and the advancements today that's allowing brands to really innovate and think about the channel differently.
I don't know, I find the whole sports betting space very interesting for me. So listening to Ray talk was really awesome. And I think that they have such an interesting, not even business model, but category, because it's like every few months a new state opens up, which allows them to do something completely different out of home. So it's like, well, one state may not have the most robust out-of-home opportunities from like a diverse tactic standpoint. All of a sudden, he talks about Massachusetts becoming legal in like March, and you can kind of like do something completely different in that state than what you do in Ohio in January. So I'm interested to watch a brand like BetMGM continuously evolve and see how they kind of conquer state by state and that category in general, whether, you know, it's the other players in that category.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was also interesting to hear each of them really talked about having, you know, some unique, very over-the-top, physical, creative location that would then be amplified across all these other media channels and platforms. So that I thought that was an interesting point as well. And I think, you know, the clients that are on stage, I think that they're probably going to get a lot of phone calls from the audience because they were pretty enthusiastic about how they're using the medium and how it's performing and their like for it.
I think also just touching on the importance of measurement. These are newer brands coming into the space. It's important for them to test, to learn, see what's really working. How do they need to pivot their approach? So again, it just shows that continues to be top of mind of being able to let them fight for the channel and the spend that's going into it.
I think there's a whole untapped world. I was listening, like the creative panel always gets me energized, and like last year we had a great panel, this year we had a fantastic panel, and I think there are so many small, independent, unique creative shops. Like how many people in this room really had heard of Matt Projects before? I bet probably maybe 3%. And there are so many creative shops out there that want to explore the out-of-home space and sometimes don't know who to turn to or what they can do or how vast it is. And getting up there and listening to people like Matt's thought process or Benji's thought process, like how they kind of, you know, want to utilize the space, what they want to do for their clients, what their, you know, bucket list is super interesting, and I think invigorates the entire room. It's kind of like, let's go. Let's kind of get these people talking and push the boundaries of out-of-home.
And touches on the importance of educating, making sure they're aware of the evolution, what's happening. I think that's key, so that way they can start building their creative strategy around that as well.
Yeah, so I think it's been a great morning so far. The conversations have been great. I'm looking forward to the second half. Stay tuned, and we'll see you on the second half of the program.
Yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. We got keynote coming up, and we're looking forward to all the conversation. So thank you again for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And now, please welcome to the stage Brian Rappaport, founder and CEO of Quan Media Group.
Hello? Oh. I'll let everyone come back in and take a seat. Hey, Lindsay. Give everyone one more second. We have a very fun panel coming up, or I should say, client spotlight. So. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you have found this to be a very productive morning. It is my pleasure to have on stage with me for our next client spotlight, Jasmine Presson, Chief Strategy Officer of Media Plus North America, and Maria Colon, VP of Marketing and Customer Experience at DeLonghi. So let's give it up for them. Comfortable? I'm all the way over here. All right. I am really excited to be up here today with a very, very, very fun client spotlight. It's been an incredible morning with some of the best and brightest minds in the out-of-home industry and in marketing. Huge thanks again to Gina, Alicia, Michael, and my co-chairs, Laura, Dave, and Ryan. And I know we're jamming a lot of content into just a few hours, so we only have a little bit of time. So let's jump right into it, and I'm going to introduce these two amazing individuals. It's pretty evident we have a lot of coffee drinkers in this room. So what better topic to talk about this morning than coffee and, of course, out of home. So Maria Colon is the head of marketing and customer experience for DeLonghi North America and has been with the brand for over 8 years. And Jasmine Presson is Media Plus Chief Strategy Officer and the lead in the DeLonghi business. Prior to Media Plus, Jasmine has spent time at Albert, Mediacom, and Worldwide. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. So out of home is clearly having a bit of a rebirth, and I know that's something that excites the both of you too. Why do you think consumers are connecting with out-of-home now a little bit more post-pandemic? Why is this channel so incredibly appealing and by far and away the best media channel out there?
Good morning, everyone. So I think really it's appealing to brands and consumers alike, and for a lot of the same reasons. So the technology that we're seeing in out-of-home, specifically digital out-of-home, from a brand perspective, it allows us to tell bold, beautiful, compelling stories, but also gives us the flexibility to flex messages. So Brian was just talking about coffee. We're in the business of coffee. We can do, day parting and talk to you about a morning coffee, and we can even look at seasonality and present a beautiful iced latte on a really hot day. So it gives us the flexibility to tell our stories, but then to the consumer, be really more relevant. So ultimately, it feels like they're discovering the brand versus we're pushing messages on them.
And I think it's also that, again, the ability to be beautiful and be immersive, as many panelists have already talked about today, in real life. I personally think, some of the resurgence, if you will, of out-of-home is driven by the decline in print and us wanting to have a physical place that we are ingesting with our eyes, beautiful imagery. And it's also a really unique channel in that, so much of our world is now, in terms of media consumption, living on our phones. Out-of-home is not a media channel we're going to, and that ads are the toll we're paying to get access to the content we want. It's a companion coming along with us while we're moving from one place to another. So we take the message in a different kind of way.
Awesome. So I think the one thing that we all agree on, and we spoke about this at length while prepping for the call, is how important it is to reach consumers in a place that matters to them. So in saying that, can you give some background on this campaign that you guys ran? And I know we have beautiful visuals that we definitely want to show. What was the strategy and the purpose, and how did you reach the DeLonghi consumer?
So the overall strategy, and again, we'll show you some of the content, was really espresso was in its infancy in North America. We sell 30 million, or consumers buy 30 million coffee machines a year, and only 1 million of those are espresso. So really very much in its infancy. We wanted to, here we go. You can see some of the Brad Pitt content going on right there. So we really wanted to have a campaign that was targeting out-of-home consumers of espresso, so those that are going to the cafes, those that are buying ready to drink, and show them that there was a possibility of being able to make this beverage in their home. We also uncovered at that point that there was this tension between consumers really not understanding that they could replicate the beverage in their home easily, and really kind of thinking that they had to have barista skills or it wouldn't be the same quality. So we really looked at launching a campaign that was very simple in the way that we presented the machine, the overall experience, an elevated demonstration, if you will, really focused on the preparation and the enjoyment, and ultimately really kind of just raise all tides for the espresso business overall.
Yeah, and it's part of a full funnel campaign. We're in other channels as well. But again, like reaching people through out of home gives us that opportunity to reach people where they are having those out-of-home espresso beverage experiences and introduce the idea that they can replicate that at home. As Maria said, the category in terms of like drinking espresso beverages, this is very well developed in our country now. Starbucks has done a great job of that. But making it at home is still like ooh, can I do it? And so normalizing the idea that the machines are accessible, especially normalizing the image right now of these fully automatic machines. That's something that not a lot of us have had personal experience with. So seeing it and normalizing it and making it something that feels familiar and desirable.
I mean, the images, I definitely need a coffee after this, but out of home is so great, and Jody moderated a fantastic panel earlier with some great creative minds. Out of home is so incredibly great because of the unlimited creative canvas, and you can do so much with the space. You want to invoke a purchase, and you have the ability to do so via some incredible formats, and I love that I'm seeing so many different images here of multiple formats, not just one. Can you speak a bit about the creative messaging used for this campaign, how it resonated with the audience, and how you conveyed the brand to those who are unfamiliar?
Yeah, I mean, again, we wanted to make sure that DeLonghi was synonymous with espresso and ultimately coffee. So if a consumer is thinking about the best quality coffee, DeLonghi is what comes to mind. In terms of the creative strategy and the messaging, again, because of the lack of education, awareness, we really wanted to make sure that we had something that was simple and that the channel had the right content. So you'll see that, well, you won't see it because you won't see all of the full funnel content that we had, but we tried to make sure that, for out of home, we did something a little bit more special, maybe a little bit more evocative, a little bit more, just different from some of the things that we were doing in some of the other channels. So trying to include Brad, having him prepare a beverage in his home, but also being really simplistic about the message, right? So we are global leaders in espresso. That's the core competency of our company. So we wanted to insert ourselves in that conversation, but really at the end of the day, we just wanted a consumer to understand this is an espresso machine. You can make it in your home. You can have a beautiful cappuccino at the touch of a button. And at the end of the day, DeLonghi's the one that makes espresso right. So espresso made right was the creative strategy, and it was mainly to be very, single-minded focus.
And how do you create an experience via your out of home? Let's talk about the connected system. I know we just spoke about awareness, but how do you ultimately create this experience within out of home?
Sure. No. So it's two components. Like we're really looking at how do we take the experience of the brand, the experience of the machine, that combination of form and function, and make that be part of the experience of the advertising. So there's a combination of these big, beautiful boards, a lot of use of video, a heavy leaning into digital boards, and then connecting that with retargeting. We actually have a partner we work with that allows us to retarget digitally people who have passed by the exact location out of our out-of-home placements, and building frequency through bus shelters and having that combination of these really big impactful things that give you that feeling of the beauty of the product, as well as taking kind of the technology inside it, the everyday routine you're going to develop with the product, and replicating that in the frequency of seeing the ads.
So Maria, I know that for DeLonghi, the relationship the brand has with its retail partners is incredibly important. Can you touch on that a bit and how you incorporated them into this brand campaign?
Yeah, I think we can both take that too. Sorry. So for us, it's really, we sell direct, so we have our own e-commerce site, but ultimately we want everyone in here to have a DeLonghi machine. It really doesn't matter where you buy it. So we've got incredibly strong relationships with our retail partners, and we really tried to add that added value as a partner to show them that we're not only selling them a machine, right? So ultimately we want to sell an experience, but we're also generating demand for them. So we include them in our national campaigns, maybe not every single, component, every single channel, but for sure in out of home, we'll tag them. So I think it not only serves the consumer to know where they can purchase and see, okay, DeLonghi, they're at, a Best Buy, a Williams-Sonoma, all these different places, but also it just adds value and it helps build and strengthen those relationships on the retailer side.
Yeah, and the footprint, the physical footprint of those retail partners was a very big consideration in our out-of-home placements. We literally looked at which of our retail partners are in what kind of mileage radius of every every single out-of-home placement that we were choosing to ensure that there was that ability not only to buy on our.com, buy online, search, add, the search ads and this and that and such, but also that there is that proximity to physical retail, so that people can see the machine, and that we're really like delivering our ads to an audience that both makes sense from, over-indexing for espresso, beverage consumption, and all that good data stuff, but also has the physical availability to be able to go interact with the machine and purchase the machine.
All right, so as we wind down, typical cliche question, but everyone in this room, this is what inspires us, this is what gets us really all thinking. So I want to know, like, as we head into the new year, why are you excited for 2023 as it relates to the brand and out-of-home, and what is particularly on your out-of-home bucket list to do down the road?
So we are going to continue to invest in out-of-home, significantly more in 23 actually, and we're looking at, I think it was mentioned before in one of the panels, just more impactful kind of digital units. We really want to be in your face with beautiful content, beautiful beans falling, this amazing cappuccino, and of course, Brad Pitt. So we definitely want to take advantage of the canvas that's available and the technology that's becoming more accessible. But on my bucket list is really kind of to bring out of home and experiential. So it's one thing to see that beautiful cappuccino on a Times Square billboard. It's completely different to be able to walk right in front of it and get that cappuccino yourself and be able to taste it. So really kind of marrying experiential with out of home. That's what I'd love to do.
Love it. Jasmine?
I think there's such untapped territory, or like I think we're waiting for user behavior to catch up in terms of what's possible with augmented reality and that interaction between screens, whether that's, an out-of-home screen and my phone, and there's, we're getting there in terms of using QR codes and this and that, and I feel like it's a bit chicken egg in terms of consumers needing the advertiser who's going to create the right amazing experience that gets their phone up, gets their phone out, and makes them realize what's possible, so that then they start lifting their phone for every out-of-home ad. I mean, not while they're driving, but in walking spaces and transit and such, and get to the point where consumers have the expectation that there is another layer of interaction or a unique experience on the website or something that's going to come with every out-of-home ad.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank both Maria and Jasmine for joining me on stage today. This was an absolute blast, and I think I speak for everyone in this room when I say that I can't wait to see how the brand continues to weave out-of-home into its media mix, and looking forward to many more visually stunning campaigns with Brad Pitt down the road. So thank you both very much, and congrats again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. That was a latte fun. Had to do it, sorry. Boo. Anyway, moving on, please welcome a very near and dear friend of mine, Evan Richheimer, CEO of New Tradition.
Thank you, Ryan and Dave and Alicia, for hosting such a wonderful morning, I should say. It's a great pleasure to be here today to introduce Michael Phillips. He is a principal and the president of Jamestown. New Tradition has had the privilege of working with and on behalf of Jamestown at the iconic One Times Square since 2015. Michael's vision and creative direction for Chelsea Market, Ponce Market, Buckhead Village, Industry City, and many other retail venues around the country has been a cornerstone of Jamestown's success. I'm so excited he gets to share his thoughts and visions surrounding the intersection of technology, advertising, and real estate with everybody in this room today. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome Michael Phillips.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. You're probably wondering why real estate in a conference for out of home. And maybe I'd start with a little bit of history on who we are. We are a 40-year-old company that has specialized in a variety of mixed use and office retail properties around the world. We're in about 7 countries in Europe, 5 countries in South America, and across the United States. One of our kind of basic tenets was to take real estate that is fairly commodity and make it non-commodity. And we spent a lot of time in the technology and media space creating relationships with tenants that help them attract and retain the best and brightest workforce. Creating that dialogue between the tenant, the employee, and the real estate has been something we've focused on for a long time. We've owned One Times Square for 25 years, and we really look at it as a key asset in our program around thinking globally and acting really locally, because it bridges both. So what you're seeing on the screen right now are a series of very analog buildings, and we wanted to show these to you because they're historic, they're not necessarily digitally relevant to what you're doing, but they all have digital spines. And they're speaking to a cohort of folks that are focused on this space. And so this is Industry City. It's 6 million square feet in Brooklyn, the largest privately owned piece of property on the waterfront today. It houses about 15,000 people and has about 35,000 people a weekend visiting it. So maybe advancing to, this is a project in Lisbon, which is the largest building in Portugal and has innovation and design intersection around coding and media and graphics and advertising. And this is a project that's rolling out for us over the last 2 years. Advance. So the big discussion here is around One Times Square. For us, we own One Times Square for about 12, 13 years with long-term 10-year leases, individual contracts, signs that were either erected or designed by the brands. And as that started to come to an end, we really got focused on creating a digital interface that would allow us to program in short form, not necessarily long form, and take the punctuation moments of the year, with the end being New Year's Eve, with over 1 billion eyes on it and about 1 million people in person, and create a storytelling environment that allowed people to engage across both the physical out-of-home advertising space, but also in the reverb of digital and social media and the metaverse and our virtual platforms. So what I'm going to sort of share with you is sort of how we got there. When we erected the new stack of signs 200 feet tall, we created a series of moments that allowed us to show the world what a very high-res artist design with L'Etoile de France, 2 moments, both the American flag, which was a dimensional moving image, and then when the whales were coming up the New York coast, which was a big moment if you live in New York City, we did this stack, which was intended just to show people what it does. After that, we moved into space around brand positioning, which you guys have seen this morning, and a variety of different people who've used this takeover technology. One of the most sort of compelling things early for us was the, is the waterfall gonna go? So this is very cool. What we were able to do is to take something that really had no commercial value, but had creative value, and engage people around what it was doing. And so what this led to was a series of advertising, which you guys have all heard about. But one of the big things was our film, television, and music takeovers. Our partnership with Spotify on Fridays allowed us to put whatever the new music was on, and then what a lot of the talent did is then repost that. So you might have 2 million people seeing it over the period that it's there, but then the repost with Taylor Swift with 234 million followers just expands that, and then her people reposting that. So as we sort of move down this path, how do we create the reverberation of the advertising in traditional channels, which we've talked about, and then the next is the metaverse, which you guys have all talked about. It's sort of a bit out of favor at the moment, but for us, it's about Web 3.0 and multi-channel distribution of content. And so we started with a virtual New Year's Eve. We actually control all 19 cameras that produce New Year's Eve. We've produced New Year's Eve for 25 years with the City of New York and Times Square Alliance. We created a makers program that anyone could go on our channels and create their own story of New Year's Eve with them as the star. In addition, we created a gamification program which had 3 games going. We had over 4 million people gaming on the end of the 1st of January, which extended the experience of New Year's Eve, which is traditionally a 6-hour period, to about 48 hours. And so as we start to test against this and collect data on how we can engage the customer, this became a really kind of key piece for us. One of the things I would say, this is the Decentraland Metafest that we launched, which had a tokenization program with gaming, obviously, had music, had NFT art galleries, and drove its own new young consumer to Times Square. So in 2019, we had 150 million eyes directly on the event, real time. By 2021, we had 310 million eyes. And what happened was COVID. A lot of the world shut down. We went out for the first time and did media in 18 different countries, and we drove them to our virtual platforms as well as our live platforms. And so as a tool for your industry, you've known this for a long time, that Times Square is a really valuable tool, but also globally, it's the most iconic asset in the world, the only one that has an actual happening around New Year's, a ball dropping, that we are sort of the father of that globally. We have competition from Shanghai and Sydney and London and all these places, but what we did over the last 2 years is consolidate those eyes and that brand engagement. And what the metaverse does is allows people that either want to come to New York, think about this asset, think about the city, may never come, but can experience it in a way that's 3-dimensional as another distribution platform. So it's not the next, it's just part of the future. And so this was a big piece of how we've treated the building. And then what's next is the redevelopment of Times Square. So I said we've owned the building for 25 years. We've just embarked on a $500 million redevelopment of the building, which will probably be the most expensive per square foot redevelopment of a non-residential building in New York. Sherry White and Amy Say, who are on our team, is really I'd like to say I'm in charge, but we all work for Sherry ultimately, so downstream. But the idea of this is that we're taking the building, which has a huge value out of home, but for really almost 50 years, before that it had more activity, it's been an empty shell inside. It has signs wrapping the building, 21 floors of just empty floors, and we've reskinned the building, we're putting new elevators on the building, and we're doing a stack that starts at the top with a Times travel history experience, the new visitor center for New York City, which walks you through the history of the city. And then below that, a stack of brand experiences called Next Gen. And this slide is, forgive me if Pepsi's in the audience, your reps probably are, but this is a dream of how you can engage your brands in a test and iterate with a consumer in a gamified way that provides rewards and points that you can engage with the brand. It can be voting for new flavors or new new drinks. In this instance of Starbucks, it's how do you engage with the environmental commitment and the social commitment of the brand. And so you're interested in talking to, from Tokyo to Hanoi, you have a foam bubble over your head and you're having a real-time engagement that has an augmented reality feature, and you take your points and you go out into the city and engage with the brand somewhere else. What is next-gen advertising? It's advertising plus augmented reality plus direct consumer engagement. It's really what we think is the future of advertising, but by the way, it's also the future of sort of all engagement. Whether, we started with our smartphones 11 years ago now, not that long, and now there's not anything that doesn't start with a Google search. So as you start to think about how people engage across a platform, these three components we think are essential. So next we sort of worked into what does it mean to take your smartphone or Oculus glasses or Google glasses and engage with the physical environment through an augmented reality. So in this slide, the idea that the Jolly Green Giant, which is a beloved historic brand reference, can climb up your building, can take an animate object that has no real value or it's monumentally protected, and you can engage it as a dynamic marketing tool and engagement tool. We piloted this technology in August of this year with something called Concrete Jungle. We partnered with Unity, which is one of the largest gamers, who brought us the animals, and we took on your smartphone and tablet the ability to stand in Times Square and watch all of these things unfold, and also take a selfie or engage with it or export that content to whomever you'd like. And so we think this has real utility, both obviously in Times Square and in any sort of physical asset that engages the public, but certainly in things that are completely innocuous, like Pier 76, that is just an empty shell. You may remember that some of the small courts for the US Open were held here. You can take this in a much more dynamic way through augmented reality and overlay a lot of different aspects to it that allow you to tell that story. So this is something called Shapeshifter, which we piloted, which is this idea that you take not just a flat ad for Dior, but you take the perfume and you spray it out into Times Square, or someone can program what scent they actually want to have delivered to them, or how it engages in a 3D sort of augmented way in the building and can move around the building. So the idea of this is really, how do we move the industry forward? How do we take what we do as a analog real estate company and leverage that in the digital space and make technology that's replicable across all assets? And so this project started about 6 months ago. It'll deliver in 2024. And as we sort of move down this path, we encourage everybody to come and tour. Whether this is interesting directly to your business or not, I think it's technology that unlocks ideas for you elsewhere, and to be on the cutting edge of what's happening, it's important to be aware of it. And so our team is standing by. We obviously partnered with Tradition, who we're incredibly devoted to, great thought partners for us and execution partners. But as we move down this path, would love to get feedback from all of you about if you think we're on the right track or you have ideas that we've missed. It's a very collaborative process. And I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, I think Michael's willing to take questions from the group. I'll start the first one. So obviously we are beyond excited about the transformation of One Times Square, and to bring it to market is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us in Tradition. Can you talk about a couple of the other best-in-class operators that you work with and kind of the dynamic conversations that you're having with them?
Sure. I mean, I think we spend a lot of time in the technology and media space, so we're creating environments in partnership with tech companies. And we're paying attention to the data that they're getting from their workforce and from their consumers and from their ad platforms. So for us, it's a backdoor into thinking about how the world is evolving and how consumer behavior is evolving. And the other thing I would maybe add is that what's really interesting about this platform is that if you're a multi-brand company, like a media company that has film, television, fashion, a variety of things, this stack allows you to create engageable experiences that ladder up to your brand value as a company. And we're having several really dynamic conversations around that. Our goal is not to have it become just one, because I think the dynamism comes from this, of that it continues to evolve. So as we lease our experience floors, either half floors or full floors, they're going to be 1 to 3 year license agreements so that it continues to be fresh. We think that that's the promise that keeps 130 million people coming through Times Square continuing to be engaged with this tool. And I would say the other thing we spent a lot of time on is the education space, which is now evolving for young kids, that's around rewards and tokenomics as they study and do extracurriculars. We think, I'm sure many of you have kids in the audience, many of you have kids that are on roadblocks and are playing on a regular basis. We spend a lot of time paying attention to Generation Alpha. No one's really talking about them, but if you have a 10-year-old, that 10-year-old's in the workforce in 10 to 12 years. They're making job decisions and career decisions. So as this technology evolves, we think it's really important to meet those, definitely Gen X, but Gen Alpha as they come on the grounds that they understand. And tokenomics and awards programs is really at the basis of this. So this customer integration piece that comes with this next gen brand experience, we think is kind of where all of this is going.
Thank you. Wonderful response to my question. I'm getting waved by the Ad Club not to open up to the larger group, so I'm going to wing another question and go off the cuff here. So what's really impressed me working with Jamestown over all these years is you've doubled down, whether it's good times or bad times. You've invested in New York and so many major cities throughout the country. And earlier today, Brian was talking about the overarching narrative, whether you turn on CNBC or read the Wall Street Journal or open Ad Age, about this recessionary environment that is coming. And here we are talking about a $500 million plus, renovation. Can you just, because confidence is important, can you just talk about your thought process? And you've grown one of the best, real estate investment trusts in the country, where your mindset is at this point in time?
Yeah, I think, obviously it's pretty shitty times out there and it's getting worse, but that creates a lot of opportunity, right? And I think as we look at, when I look back on 2008, where any of my regrets really lie, it's not moving fast enough as we came out. And so the people that we think were visionaries and did an incredible job, like look at Hearst Tower, that was the first building to start in 2008. They did it despite the problem. JP Morgan's doing the same thing. So as we think about both the investments in digital, and this is not a small investment across our platform. We're talking about one business, one building, but we see this in our shopping centers. We see this in our office buildings. We've invested in tech around social apps and a variety of ways for people to engage. This is essential. As we watch how people consume, it's rapidly changing. And with COVID, we're seeing the fastest adoption of technology in our lifetime. And it really is leaving people behind. I don't know how many of you go to the airport and can't talk to a person at a desk anymore and have to go to a kiosk. All of that is just the beginning of what's to come. So for us, we're a 40-year-old company, and we have our foundations are in Germany, which is very long dated investment. We think in multiples, we don't think in IRRs. So for us, this is really, we don't have another option but just to keep investing.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, right? Like when COVID hit, the markets dropped like an elevator, and New York and every major metropolitan city has risen back like stairs. And, you know, again, you turn on the news, you read, and you're just like, you read overarching narratives of the death of urbanization, which is crazy to me. And just to hear your thoughts and you know, fellow thought leaders like Sherry about, you know, where this city is going and where almost every major metropolitan city is going, and it's in the right direction despite what we're reading and hearing about.
Yeah, New York is amazing. You know, I live between London, New York, and San Francisco, and San Francisco and New York got pummeled, obviously. But if you spend time on the ground in both of these cities, they're dynamic, they're alive, and one of the things that I think I didn't say about our company is we fundamentally see ourselves as underdogs, and that we're a small company in the scheme of things, but we're agile. And I think when you see New York, all the new restaurants that have opened, all the retail that's reopened, and the vacancies that you went up Madison Avenue in late 2020 and half the street was vacant. It's all refilled because the brands got smart and retrenched and stepped out and came in for better economics. But now for the first time we have small restaurants, chef-driven restaurants open that haven't opened in the city in over 10 years. You know, all the chefs went to Brooklyn, and now they're in Philadelphia. Like, who goes to Philadelphia to open a restaurant if you could open it in New York? But you go there because it's actually affordable. And so now New York has shown up in that way, and I think you just never bet against the city.
Great, thank you. And thank you again for doing this today and presenting to everybody. So if you give Michael a round of applause, it'd be appreciated.
Thanks, everybody.
And for the next panel, please allow me to introduce Ian Dalamar, the Vice President of Digital and Growth at Lamar.
All right, great to see everybody. 120 years old is our company. So why do you let a guy that works for a company that's 120 years old come talk about the future? I'm still a mama's boy. So every morning I talk to my mom, no matter where I am, and she says, "What are you talking about today?" And I said, "The future." And she said, "Let the audience know that I gave you that title when you were 5 because I got very bored of things." So I'm super excited to introduce my next panelist. You guys come on up. We are gonna skip the typical intro because you always have a piece of paper with their beautiful faces on it. Definitely LinkedIn them, follow them. But we're gonna go left to right here. I have AK, I have Edgar, I have Keishan, like the Shin, and Mike Shannon. So real quick, so before we dive deep in, because we have a lot to cover in 20 minutes, Michael, spectacular job setting the tone here. But real fast, whether you realize it or not, everyone in this audience toggles between the virtual and the physical world, whether you know it or not. And most of us are looking at it right now. We may be texting, we may be emailing. We're at the infancy of living in this virtual world. And a lot of people get scared about the metaverse. A lot of people think it's like a cesspool. But my expert panels here are going to prove out the effectiveness, and not only the effectiveness of these channels and of these properties, but more importantly, there we go. More importantly, I was about to say the key point there. More importantly here is I personally believe that out of home is the success and the driver that has to happen. It's the conduit that has to allow a consumer to actually give a shit, to engage, then dive deep into the metaverse or dive deep into NFTs. So we're gonna kick it off first to Edgar at BuzzFeed. So Edgar, you did something fascinating, ComplexCon. I'm gonna let you talk about the event, and I'm going to let you explain how you quickly realize there's a whole nother universe out there to tap into that world.
Good morning, everyone. So for those that aren't familiar with BuzzFeed, we represent a portfolio of premium brands in news, in lifestyle, in food and entertainment. And we primarily focus on Gen Z. And so what we primarily do is create content and experiences in the web environment. But what we saw was a transformational shift years ago where young people wanted everything that they found online in the IRL. And so specifically with Complex, we represent sneakers, hip hop, streetwear, street art, which have become pop culture. And nothing in the physical world existed in a festival-like experience, so we created Complex Con. We're 7 years in now. Each year we draw about 30 to 50,000 people, and we have a marketplace of over 100 brands. And so what we were able to do was take what we were doing in the digital landscape and now make it physical, especially for brands. And we were talking before about a billboard and a retail shop. That's exactly what we were able to create. So the consumer can now see a brand, but also shop their products. What was also interesting at that time was that we started using the physical space to go into the metaverse space. And so if you were on location, you could use your mobile device and access limited edition products in the online environment. And so we've now created a world that you can toggle between worlds at any given moment. And at the start of the pandemic, when we couldn't do the physical space, we saw a really interesting transformational space for Gen Z, which brought commerce, also streaming, entertainment, and gaming. But no one had created a space, so we created something metaverse-like, where people could go ahead and create their own avatar and then have a shopping experience. And so we've now done 4 different versions of that. And it's really interesting because you could be in this space, you could go ahead and see an out-of-home billboard in this world, click into it, and immerse yourself within that space, but also buy product. In addition, while you're there and you've created this avatar, you could actually order food to your home and have it be delivered within 60 minutes. So now we've created an ecosystem of web, IRL, and Web3 space that we are now giving what was once scarcity in limited edition products in all 3 environments. And we believe that's the future.
Yeah, and look, at the end, I'm going to challenge everyone to immerse yourself into the metaverse. But oftentimes people get confused there, right? It's like, all right, great. You know, I have a space helmet character. It's mostly because I follow my kids around in roadblocks, just like I would in real life. But Alex and Kishan, one of the important things that are happening, you guys are at Cupcake and B&L Studios, one of the important things that happens is NFTs. And I know we're throwing a lot of acronyms out to you guys, but I'd love to kind of share the Tommy Hilfiger experience. If we could roll that video. Just hold on.
I'm claiming my NFT now at the Tommy Factory here in New York City, 2022. I love it. Fantastic. Does it look like me?
Boom, it's on my phone. Totally cool.
All right, I'm going to get you to explain a little bit more what was happening there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Keishan Shah. I'm the COO over at B&J Studios. And I think as a crypto and Web3 representative, I think our industry has done an awful job of trying to explain what we do, why it's important, and frankly, adding financial risk, right, into existing channels. What you saw there was Tommy Hilfiger himself, who looks great at 71, by the way, getting his first NFT and creating a crypto wallet. And our view at B&J Studios is what Michael was referring to earlier of Gen Alpha and having metaverse-like experiences. We take that and build user experience that works across generations. So even if you're 71 years old, you're able to create your first crypto wallet and claim your first NFT in under a minute. And why that's important is that it's an accelerant to existing marketing channels versus creating its entirely new lane.
Yeah, and so Alex, because as an advertiser, the tough thing to think about is like, okay, I'm reaching this, again, my character in the metaverse, space helmet, very bizarre, not very Ian-esque, and everyone out there is the same way. Oftentimes advertisers get worried that the consumer that lives in the metaverse, the consumers that are engaging in like in ComplexCon, are buying and interacting, how do they take that consumer from the virtual world and then bring them back to the physical world as the same human, or should they?
I mean, hi everyone, it's great to be here, by the way. It's one of the major reasons why I joined Cupcake. As Keishan mentioned, the difficulty and the complexity of gaining your first digital collectible, whether you call it an NFT or a virtual good, or a virtual creative, as Nike is calling it nowadays. Everyone has their version of this digital keepsake. How do you get there? Can anyone tell me right now the easiest way to get there? You have to understand what a crypto wallet is, and there's a lot of crypto wallets out there. Which is the best for me? There's a minting process. There's this thing called blockchain. Why is blockchain important? To me, blockchain is important in the true spirit of Web3, where you're empowering the end user. And who's that end user? It's the participant. It's Tommy Hilfiger. It's the participant at a music festival. It's the artists. These are the creators that build all these wonderful experiences, but they're always gated. There's always middlemen. There's always someone that's trying to take a piece of that. Blockchain means that you have true ownership. And what does it mean? You have property rights. What does that mean? There's an actual smart contract built into when you mint your first NFT with terms and conditions. So you are, from a legal standpoint, totally covered. Empowering the user. It's property rights for the common person. And again, as I mentioned, in the spirit of Web3, that's what it's all about. You're empowering people to own their content, share it, resell it, and potentially get a cut out of it. So it's really, truly empowering the underserved, in my opinion.
And so, Mike, looping you, and you represent the largest digital network across historically Black colleges and universities. Real fast, my good friend, he owns a collectible shop. So you and I were talking in the hall earlier, and a lot of these college athletes with NIL deals, they're branding themselves. They're a brand just as Procter & Gamble, et cetera. You and I were kind of talking about that. Like, these historically Black college athletes are a brand as well, and you may have an augmented reality experience with the All-Star game that you represented. Talk a little bit more how you can use the NFT, how you can use AR, and really make that athlete that oftentimes is untouchable on the field become maybe someone that you could throw a football with after a victorious game.
Yeah, so essentially what Monster Edge does is we actually work with HBCUs, and we have different properties. So we really focus on large scale, historically, for 60 to 100-year events in the HBCU community, like the Bayou Classic, like the Florida Classic, that is really, really kind of a staple in the community, and we bring different opportunities there. So the on-campus network is one part of it. Then you have the actual event side, and then we have our partnerships with like entities like the HBCU All-Star Games. So one of the things that you can do, which is really, really cool, it's during the Final Four with a brand like a Cupcake, is you can create a digital NFT with the players in the jerseys, giving them exposure, giving them opportunity. And because the players are, new every year, it's a great collectible item. So those are just some of the things that you can do. What I really like about it, it's basically a wide open canvas, because historically it's been an underserved market. A lot of really good brands, solid brands, are diving in now. So it's really, really exciting time.
Yeah, so Edgar, you were kind of given the example of where the virtual ComplexCon has gone. My kids live in Roblox, and ironically, and it may be a bit controversial, but I don't believe that putting a billboard in the metaverse means anything. So touch a little bit on the avatar and the importance and how brands are utilizing the avatar. I know those who attended the DPAA event, Erica at Adidas, she showed up and she talked very heavily. And if you haven't watched that, go to the DPAA website and watch that. It's fantastic because she talks about shoe drops in the physical world, but that virtual world is even more important, and they're in that experience.
Yeah, and Adidas has been a great partner to Complex in both the IRL and the URL, and they were one of our first partners for Complex Land. I think the billboard's a complement to the overall story, right? So we think about the story of what the brand wants to tell in the .com space, the IRL space, and the Web3 space. And so it's obviously a part of awareness, but it's also about brand immersion. And so I don't think they need to live in silos anymore. They can live together. And so this is an immersive storefront, in which I think is an amazing idea, and how we expand that. You know, even with ComplexCon, we do it once a year. It's very hard to scale. So we think a lot about, like, how could we take that globally? And out of home would be a perfect opportunity for us. So if we thought about One Times Square and our good friends at New Tradition, you know, how do we make billboards as storefronts where you could get access to limited edition sneakers? You know, that become an extension of what we're doing on the ground at ComplexCon. So I don't think billboards are the thing that lives exclusively in that space. I think it's part of the overarching thing, so that people identify what brand is doing it.
So, Alex, do you feel that the virtual world, Web3, becomes part of the overall omnichannel?
Yeah, you're going to blend in between, but from an out-of-home perspective, for me, out-of-home, right, it's real estate. It's also ephemeral art. Effective out-of-home has a little bit of magic where it's a blend of really good marketing where it doesn't seem like marketing. It's artistic, right? If you look back at, like, back in the decades of, like, Apple and Absolute, beautiful canvases on out-of-home formats. It's never been memorialized. It's in some, you know, binder at some agency right now, right? Using something like Web3 and NFTs, you can memorialize these moments. And then what can you use with that, right? Say if I collected a bunch of Absolute pieces that I thought was works of art from a billboard and out-of-home perspective, because my ID is verifiable and it's immutable, someone's going to notice that I am a collector of out-of-home art. And maybe I'll get like some sort of promotion or a pop-up event that I get invited to because of my sort of allegiance and contribution towards it, right? And that's what I mean. Again, you're empowering the end user. This is not a middleman game anymore. And I'm really excited to see what other doors are open.
Yeah, so let's stay on that topic. I have a vision, and shout out to Kelly Peppers at Colossal. Her and I have been throwing this collaboration out, and it's a free idea for everyone. I would love to see, and Christian, I want you to kind of touch on this. I have a vision that a hand-painted wall, it's up for a week to a month, but there's that very nostalgic piece that's lost. You know, we all see these walls, beautiful walls across the country. They're put up. Obviously, social media has been a massive way to continue the conversation, but then eventually it loses its luster in the scroll. It ends up being painted over, and then it's lost forever. I want you to touch on this idea. The hand-painted wall, one of the cans, one of the paintbrushes is a piece of art. It's a part of that experience. Maybe it's a workable, tangible NFT. Touch on the importance of that, and I think a great opportunity for the industry to start thinking a little bit differently and being more prideful about our artwork.
Infinite sum. This is not a 100-year-old brick wall. This is an opportunity to showcase a brand and create a digital experience. The hard part about this is how to actually get this done. There's only 25,000 software developers in all of Web3. So being able to get actual execution of existing channels where a brick wall, right, could be an opportunity for an existing campaign to be laid on, and then there's a digital experience associated with that where if you went and created a crypto wallet or got an NFT, and now versus directing a user to post an image on a social network, it brings it back to commerce, or it brings it back to getting their DeLonghi coffee maker and having their coffee maker go and actually provide them with an opportunity to go and buy additional capsules to go and refill. That becomes more of an immersive commerce and retail experience, which then improves a lot of the customer acquisition piece.
Yeah, so we talked about this, God, it's been probably, maybe it was at this conference, but we all talked about this as an industry, continuing the conversation onto social, continuing the conversation onto the mobile device. Mike, kind of touch on that a bit. You know, you guys you had an amazing event. Obviously, I'm a bit biased to the Bayou Classic, being a New Orleans boy, but the Florida event, you guys had Florida Blue. You guys put on a fascinating event, big game, but the game's over. Right. So based on the technology that we're talking about today, how do you continue that for that brand, for it to be a journey forever and not just an experience, for one night?
Gotcha. Mike, I guess you can play the video.
Yeah.
Florida Blue is proud supporter of this game and many HBCUs, creating lasting legacies of prosperity for our communities.
Looks, throws, back shoulder, caught. What a catch. This time it's 48-8, and this handshake a little different than last week.
That's untimely, by the way, with Dion bouncing, but
Yeah, it's a tough blow for the HBCU market, but he left us in good hands. But to answer your question, a lot of it comes down to the actual brand partner, and what their goals are. But obviously you have standard, social media outlets where you want to amplify the opportunity and kind of further the conversation. Really, at the end of the day, it's an ongoing conversation, and it doesn't stop when the event stops. It's a constant conversation for them to reach their target audience and kind of continue the dialogue, essentially.
yeah. So we're right at 2 minutes left. I want to keep this flowing. As we wrap up here, what is kind of right to left here? What is something the industry can do better embracing this technology? And I think before you answer that, Gen Z is the generation that's existing right now that's going to be in the workforce, just like was alluded to earlier. These are people that are going to be buyers very shortly. These are going to be people that are on the brand. And my 10-year-old toggles between the metaverse, the virtual, and the physical world all day. He bought us movie tickets the other day in Roblox because he saw a virtual billboard, a physical billboard, and then saw it in Roblox, and then purchased it in Roblox. So how can we play in this world, AK?
I would say, for me, keep building, keep experimenting. There's not enough of that. It really isn't. I know we're in a down market, we're in a bear market, we're in a winter market, whatever you want to call it. Since I've jumped feet first into this universe of Web3, there's nothing, all we've been doing is building, testing, breaking things, and moving forward. So we're here to experiment with you as well. We're also still in the very first inning of Web3 and what it has in store. So yeah, that's my advice.
I would suggest investing in the audience and not necessarily just thinking about the platform. And so I think that's what's been a guiding light for us as a media company, is thinking truly and understanding what the audience wants from inspiration and utility, and then we build for that, not for the short term because we see headlines that Web3 is popping, but because we know that that's where the audience wants something more dynamic than what exists now.
For 2023, apply as much empathy as possible. So for billboards and the out-of-home industry, M&A or thinking about how to add the net new billboard versus accelerating a brand or advertiser's existing engagement channels and not letting the user scroll through just another ad on their feed will be incredibly important.
And I would say for what Monster Edge does is essentially, and I hate to use this term because it's kind of overused, if brands show up in an authentic way, they'll get real return.
So next year, I hope this panel is bigger. I hope that, not bigger in number of people, I think we won that game today, but I hope we have a brand up here. I hope we have a tech company up here, and I hope that we all challenge each other. My last challenge to everyone in the audience, as goofy as it may sound, go home, download Roblox on your mobile device, your tablet, make an avatar, make it fun, walk around. We have such a plethora of knowledge in this audience today. Immerse yourself into it. You want to own this, just as 5 years ago, everyone wanted to own programmatic. You want to own this. When a brand comes and says, hey, the metaverse, I'm going to go over to my digital shop. No. You want to own this part. So next year, hopefully we have 2 or 3 time slots up here where we have brands, and go learn some more acronyms, nothing more than a good old NFT Metaverse, et cetera. So we appreciate everyone today, and thank you so much for the time, guys. So this is a bit of a, oh no, you're introducing even.
Thank you to Ian and that incredible panel. That was awesome. And now for the highly anticipated moment of the day, the OAAA Media Plan of the Year Awards. Please join me in welcoming Anna Bagar, President and CEO of the Outdoor Advertising Association of America.
Good morning, everybody. It's really great to be here. And I thought that this morning was just so inspiring. Amazing content, amazing examples, and just fantastic creative. So I'm so glad to be here. I really like this particular event a lot. But today, I think it was definitely the best that I've been to, and just so inspiring and telling for our industry. Also, an absolutely amazing view that you can't see and you shouldn't be looking at, but still is. But you should be looking not necessarily at me now, but at what I'm about to present to you. I am so thrilled to today present the Media Plan of Award. And this has been a fantastic year, not just for us at the OAAA, but for the industry as a whole. This week, we presented the Q3 revenues for out-of-home, and we were up by 11%. And to date this year, we're up by 26.5%. So far, we're going really strong. And I am pretty sure I can say that we're the fastest growing media there is. And hopefully we will continue to be. With great campaigns like what we've seen right now, bright future, and great media planning, we are going to keep that spot. So, as some of you may know, OAAA established the Out-of-Home Media Awards in 2000. And today, the purpose remains exactly the same as then. When plans combine inspiring creative design, strategic placement of messages, and proper media campaign weight, the results are truly outstanding, and these campaigns are really here to showcase campaigns that can do that. So today, we're going to celebrate strategies that brought client objectives to life and led to campaigns that created an emotional connection with consumers in an absolutely outstanding way. And we had an amazing lineup of judges this year. We had Billy Long from Publicis, who may be in the room, I'm not sure, but there he is. Thank you, Billy. We had Michael Lieberman from Kinetic. Not sure if he's here. Anyway, he did a great job. Ashwini Karandikar from the 4As. And Justin Simmons from Project X. So thank you to the judges. Also, Advertising Club of New York has been an incredibly strong partner and valuable to the OAAA since our very first out-of-home event. So I want to take this opportunity to thank the organization, Gina Grillo, her whole team, and Rick Song for all the work they do for us. You are just amazing to partner with. So thank you. And thank judges. So back to the awards. The judges had a tough job. We received a record-breaking number of entries this year, and they were all very strong. The judges carefully considered and then selected 10 winners that I think we're going to see now. So please roll the video. truly outstanding campaign, but I am not the one who's going to tell you all about it. I'm just going to say huge congratulations to the NBA campaign that is the Media Plan Award of the Year winner. And with that, I'm going to welcome Laura Brandes from Report, who's going to share with us how her team made this campaign come to life. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you so much to the OAAA. This really means a lot to us, and I can say from the very start as we were developing it, it was a truly special campaign, so it's nice to be recognized for it as well. So yeah, I know everyone's eager to get out, so I'll keep this short and sweet, but wanted to give you a little bit of background of our approach, how we built out this campaign, and then we'll close it out with a bit of a sizzle so you can see it. So in terms of the background, before we get straight into the objective and the KPIs we had to deliver upon, there are 4 key pillars we had to think about in terms of some of the historical knowledge about the playoffs and the finals. First and foremost was really continuing on with the mission. It's really important to the NBA that they're really celebrating their league and continuing to inspire new and existing fans. But we had to do this by reimagining some of their approach and putting their brand on a really global scale. And why it was important, when you think about the playoffs and finals, this is their chance to really reach their widest audience. Everyone is tuning in. This was our chance as paid media advertisers as well to really make it impactful. The last piece of this as well, or I should say the second to last, was also evolving the audience, or evolving the plan as the audience evolved. So as you think about it from a tournament perspective, it starts out with the core audience of sports fans. Everyone really cares about their team, but the minute they get eliminated, all of a sudden the fan base changes. And as you think about the course to the finals, all of a sudden it really becomes a 50-50 split between not only of your core sports fans, but also your casual fans, people that just want to be part of that hometown hype within their market. And then the last phase, of course, this is all about tune-in and driving that viewership. The 2019 through 2020, that was a really big deal for them where they saw a steep decline in viewership, big part of that being the pandemic, as well as just the political landscape. The 2020 finals happened in the bubble, and then in 2021, that season really started to eat into the summer, and you had 2 smaller teams as well into the mix. So the pressure was on across all paid media channels to really deliver on delivering that viewership for the finals. So if we can go to the next slide. So the objective across the board for all paid channels was really to make up noise and drum up excitement, ultimately though by generating tune-in awareness, consideration, and developing a cultural resonance. How can we really ingrain our advertising with rich storytelling that's going to get fans to really be excited and engage with the brand? We had 2 target audiences, as mentioned before, that we were looking to target. That was sports fans as well as casual fans. And then ultimately, too, what is the role of out-of-home? Every channel has its own piece that we need to really contribute. So not only did we have to ladder back to those KPIs of the overarching objective, but the goal and role of out-of-home was really to make sure we are capitalizing on that hometown hype and excitement. So before we got to before we started to develop our out-of-home approach, we had 3 challenges we had to overcome. One of them being, this is a live sporting event. This wasn't on one night. We had 16 TBD markets, unknown flights, and we had to support them over the course of a 10-week period. There was also a creative ask as we think about how can we bring in some cultural relevance to the campaign. So it was really important that we were thinking about how can we get fans, players, celebrities, and influencers as well to really engage throughout the course of this 10-week period. So as we were thinking about it, programmatic seemed like a no-brainer in terms of flexibility, and so did dynamic content, right? Let's really leverage what's going on with technology and the advancements made. That being said, blending the 2 was something that had never been done before, not because it wasn't an idea, the technology hadn't really existed when you're thinking about how you can bring dynamic content on a mass scale in a fully automated capacity, which then leads us to our approach that we developed for this campaign. So we did decide, though, programmatic had to be the anchor. We had to be able to activate as soon as we knew a market or a team was going to advance. We also wanted to get rid of our message right away because all of a sudden the hype, the excitement, that pivots once your team is out. As I mentioned in the historical part of the background of the brief, it was important, too, that we had to evolve the strategy. So not only did we make sure that our geography remained king, of course, of where the hometown team was, but at the same time, we had to evolve our the markets and the units that we were also focusing on. So as we started out with the sports fan, by the time we got to the finals, we also had to make sure we were really thinking about the casual fan as well. And then DCO, I think this was one of those things, we vetted a handful of partners as who was going to be the right player for us that we could really utilize from a programmatic perspective. And after quite a few conversations, Vistar actually had a beta dynamic spec already in play. They had not been able to launch it on a mass scale. So through partnership with Vistar and their SSP, Dive Networks, who were able to help us put together hundreds of different versions of creative in all of these different markets, And then also every media owner that was involved. We could not have done it without each other, as there's a lot of back-end testing as well. And then how are we going to now deliver that message? So if we're going to ignite that brand love and cultural resonance and bring that conversation to the streets, we wanted to have multiple different dynamic messages. So not only did they have their standard brand creative, but we also incorporated countdowns to tip off, live scoring. We also did hometown wins, and then we wanted to bring the social chatter of what was happening on the online world to the streets as well. So we had moderated tweets that were also incorporated into the mix. And then to think about this as well, over the course of 10 weeks, there's those tentpole moments. So how are we really going to capitalize and drum up excitement as well? So one thing that we wanted to think about is what were those 2 moments that we could really put some paid media dollars behind? One that was at the tip-off of the at the start of the playoffs, and then as well as the tip-off to the finals. So this is where we started to have a lot of synergies with the social team. So as Media Hub's social team was taking over Twitter on those 2 key days, Out of Home was taking over Times Square with 1-hour roadblocks, with fully moderated tweets and content on those screens to really drum up the hype, and for those passing by to remind them to go ahead and tune in. So for the next slide, you know, the proof is in the pudding, right? At the end of the day, we have to deliver on those results. We also completely changed up our strategy this year compared to what we did in 2021. So we wanted to see, did this new go-to-market approach actually work? So of course, at the end of the day, we wanted to deliver viewership and really increase those ratings. And year over year, we were able to show a 24% increase in TV viewership. It was actually the most watched NBA series finals game in the last 3 years, which was a huge win to make sure we were delivering on those KPIs. And then as we compared 21 to 22, we incorporated an M4 brand study, as we wanted to see how much did this new strategy really change and showcase a lift and have a benchmark to essentially work off of. Across the board, we saw a massive uptick in all 3 categories. When it came to lift, in tune-in intent, we saw a 25% lift, a 25% lift in playoff consideration, as well as a 7% lift in playoffs awareness. We also wanted to understand at the time of the event, there were 2 other live sporting events happening as well. So we had the MLB regular season as well as the Stanley Cup. And through these results, we were able to understand that the NBA playoffs came up in #1 awareness of all 3 events that were happening from those that were exposed to the out-of-home ads. And then the last piece, we obviously incorporated some social chatter as well into this. So we wanted to better understand what was that conversion volume, how much were we able to drive online as well. And that's where we saw 1.1 million Twitter mentions, which was a 6% lift in that volume compared to the last year. And so with that, we put together a little sizzle that kind of highlights the campaign, the creative, and some of the key takeaways. So if you want to play that, that would be great. Thank you so much again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I think maybe you want to, yeah. Thank you. Congratulations, NBA report, NBA over there. And also, huge congratulations to all the other winners. And thank you, everyone. See you next year, if not before in Nashville. Thank you.
All right, what a great morning. I think all the conversations were really great. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I wrap this thing up. The VIP and speaker VIP and sponsor will be, after party will be at the secondary bar in the hallway near the reception. And if you don't know where that is, ask one of these fine folks from the ad club. But, you know, the day started out, you know, really great. I mean, we heard from BetMGM and Pinterest talking about the vital role out-of-home is playing in building their brands and their platforms. And then we heard from Jody and the creative panel about how important out-of-home is giving the physical element that's creating that dynamic sort of amplified, that moment that can be amplified across many platforms. Then we heard from Michael at Jamestown about the huge investments that they're making in the digital infrastructure that's going to create all these great brand immersive experiences and do some really, really dynamic creative. It's just really going to up the ante on the creative opportunities. And then Ian told us, you have to own the metaverse. So start learning about it, download Roblox, like he said. The metaverse is going to be with us, and we all need to own it. And then congrats to Lauren Report team. I mean, what a great media plan of the year, sizzle, and way to end this thing. But the nice thing I think about all the conversations was, you know, typically we have conversations around data or mobile targeting or attribution or context. But the common theme across the whole morning was that all of those elements were inherent and very linear in all of the conversations. It wasn't just about one thing or the other. It was about the combination of all of them that's creating these really amazing out-of-home campaigns. So I hope everybody learned something from that. So with that, that's a wrap. On behalf of the Ad Club and our committee, we again thank our sponsors for all their support. Don't forget to keep the conversation by joining the Ad Club and getting involved in making our industry the best it can be. Have a great day and happy holidays.
I can make your hands clap. Said I can make your hands clap. Somebody save your soul, 'cause you've been sinning in the city. I know too many troubles, all these lovers got you losing control. You like a drug to me, a luxury, my sugar and gold. I want your sex and your affection when they're holding you close. 'Cause you don't even know. I can make your hands clap. Said I can make your hands clap. Every night when the stars come out, am I the only living soul around? Need to believe you could hold me down, 'cause I'm in need of something good right now. We could be screaming